So, Julius Caesar, a man whose name became synonymous with the word emperor, even though he himself was never officially an emperor. Funny how that works, right? Let's start with the fact that everyone gets this wrong. First off, Caesar didn't conquer Rome in one swift sword-drawn move. This was a long game, about 20 years in the making, and it started not with a war, but with politics. In 60 BC, Caesar forms an alliance with two other powerful Romans, Pompey and Crassus. Historians call this the First Triumvirate. The Romans themselves probably called it three ambitious guys agreeing to split power until they inevitably turn on each other. Next, Caesar heads to Gaul, roughly modern-day France, and spends 8 years methodically conquering it. Officially, to protect Roman interests. Unofficially, to get himself an army, money, and a reputation as an unbeatable general. Side effect: he writes a book about his victories, commentaries on the Gallic War, narrating himself entirely in the third person. Imagine your coworker writing their own performance review, like, "He handled the project brilliantly." That's exactly what Caesar did. Self-promotion on a legendary scale. While Caesar's off fighting in Gaul, the triumvirate falls apart. Crassus dies in a disastrous campaign against the Parthians. Pompey, watching Caesar's popularity grow to an almost embarrassing degree, starts getting nervous. The Senate gets nervous too, and they decide Caesar needs to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. And this is where the famous moment happens. Caesar stands on the bank of a small river called the Rubicon, a boundary that a Roman general with an army was strictly forbidden to cross. Crossing it meant declaring war on his own state. He utters a line that becomes legendary, essentially saying the decision is made and there's no turning back, and crosses the river with his troops. Under Roman law, this was an act of outright rebellion. From Caesar's own perspective, it was the only way to avoid ending up on trial and losing everything he'd spent 20 years building. This, by the way, is where the modern phrase crossing the Rubicon comes from, meaning a point of no return. Thanks for that one, Caesar. When Pompey hears about this, instead of digging in to defend Rome, he simply flees the city along with most of the Senate. Apparently his plan B was run very fast. Caesar walks into Rome essentially without a fight. Not an epic battle, just an empty city and confused citizens who aren't entirely sure what happens next. What follows is several years of civil war across the Mediterranean. Caesar chases down Pompey and his supporters, Spain, Greece, Egypt. Hello, Cleopatra, though that's a whole separate story, North Africa. Caesar wins everywhere, largely thanks to speed and sheer nerve. He had a habit of showing up exactly where nobody expected him and moving faster than his opponents could react. By 45 BC, Caesar is the last man standing as Rome's real ruler. Officially, he's not a king. Romans had hated that word ever since they kicked out their last king, roughly 450 years earlier. So Caesar picks a more modest title instead, dictator for life. As a saying might go, if you can't call yourself king, pick a title that sounds even worse. Some senators aren't thrilled with this modesty. In 44 BC, a group of conspirators, including Brutus, a man Caesar considered close to a friend, arrange a rather unpleasant meeting for Caesar right there in the Senate. What happens next, most people already know from history class. So, to sum it up, Caesar didn't conquer Rome with a dramatic sword-in-hand charge. He built his power over years of political maneuvering, military victories in a foreign land, and one decisive step across a small river. Sometimes history isn't changed by a grand battle. It's changed by one stubborn man deciding not to turn his army around. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed learning about history from this angle, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new videos. There are plenty more interesting stories on the way. See you in the next video.